Welcome back to another episode with Copy with No Filter. It's just myself and Anne today. Unfortunately, I'm cannot make it today, but yeah, we'll try and see how we get on
I keep hitting the balance and then I'm like tipped over by one or the other by the moment. Managing, guys. No
yeah,
one's falling down.
I
Yet,
know
so
you're
it's
still
good.
here. We're still here, but that's how it is being a mom, I suppose.
Yeah,
Sicknesses and other
that's
complicate.
that's the best thing about having three of us. I must
Yeah.
admit that.
Yeah. Remember, you both were like, are you going to be okay going back home? Are you going to gonna make it back home in one piece? And I did, but 10 minutes into the journey, was kind of remembered there was a warning sign on my dashboard saying that one of my doors was opened.
I did not realize this was
No,
really
you can
not
laugh at
scripted.
it. Well, I certainly didn't laugh at it, but afterwards, I was just kind of going, my goodness. I drove all the way home for half an hour with that warning sign on. I could have. It was a journey that take quite a lot, so I know the road like the back of my hand. I could have stopped anywhere to close that darn door, but I didn't. And obviously it still bothered me as well. And I was just kind of thinking that was where I was at in life at that point.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I know that I should have stopped someone and closed that door and taken care of that matter, but I just didn't have the energy or the time to deal with that, so I just kind of drove on. And I think postpartum is quite similar
That's a
to
great
that.
the great story because that's exactly what
Do you think
sometimes
so?
you need a flashing light in your life sometimes, and it needs to be external,
Exactly.
not sometimes that's what it is.
I think, yeah,
Well,
I think we were kind of modern mums now, and we all kind of have modern in a cars, just like the modern cars that we have. Sometimes we do get in a warning sign saying,
yeah.
you need to take care of matters. We do get those kind of signs, but sometimes you just don't have, regardless of these warnings, you're just not able to stop the car and, close
Mm,
that
yeah.
door. Do you know what I mean? It's just don't have the energy or the time to deal with something. And I feel like that is a lot to do with how exhausted that you're as well. Sometimes,
Yeah.
you've got a lot of different things to balance and
And all of those things that you talked about, challenges, not having the energy, not having, those are all part of postpartum. And that topic is, it's not, we didn't keep it, the lid closed on it or anything. That's how we left it off last time because we
which is
talked about
brilliant. Yeah.
pregnancy and we said, look,
Yeah.
the natural flow of things postpartum is the most important thing after the pregnancy, isn't it?
It really is. And that is one of the main reasons why we started this as well. And I think,
I think that was the reason.
that was the reason. That was the reason that we kind of came together. And because we all kind of felt quite alone, in that journey as well. And then sometimes they just, you would struggle, regardless of whether your experience or whether your, whatever insight that you have about motherhood or
Yep.
parenthood, you would struggle at some point. And what do you do when you do struggle?
Mm-hmm.
What can you do when you do get these warnings? Do you stop the car and just kind of take care of the matter, or do you drive on and just kind of get to the other bit, or do you ask someone to kind of come and help you, kind of
And
thing?
each of those scenarios are all possible and they're all have their ups and downs. So it's just we're just here to give you a little bit of perspective on how and what happened with us and what we've learned from,
Yeah.
I suppose, all our kind of trial, or even actually there's lots of people who have since come on that journey. So
Absolutely.
I suppose the first thing today then to say is, how would we define what a postpartum is? What is that period and how long is it?
Yeah.
When does it start?
Yeah.
I would say as soon as you go into labor, you're going into intrapartum, and then therefore the postpartum period after your baby comes.
Yeah.
So it could be a lot of different scenarios. You could have your baby with you. You might not have your baby with you. And that needs to be addressed as well. And that needs to give its own time, I suppose. But let's talk about having your baby. Your baby is there. And where do we go from there? I personally think, like they say, it takes 2 years to go back feeling normal for a mum, apparently.
Really, too.
I know.
4 years down the line.
And everyone's different. I think that's the main thing for
Mhm.
everyone. Postpartum is a different type of life. So in my person, I would say anything between 0 to 18 months of your child, I would say,
Mhm.
and everyone's scenario is different, but that's what I would say as
Yeah.
class as the postpartum
Yeah.
period. So from the newborn cuddles
Yeah.
and all the way up until um um probably 18 months, I would say. But yeah, up to 2 years, maybe even beyond as well for some people. It all depends on what your scenario is with your going back to work, your child, and who takes care of them.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things. So let's talk about a little bit of, I suppose, um, the good things about postpartum. You go.
Well, the good things. This is going to be short. It's not. I suppose, like, in having your baby, like, and that's something that, yeah, it's sometimes like when we not like we take for granted, but like in having a baby, like a healthy baby and a healthy pregnancy and a healthy like birth experience, like that is something that's to be like to be grateful for, and having that time to be with your baby and just tend to your baby and make sure the baby is alive and
Yeah.
survive, like and having a good one whole year in many cases or 9 months as a maternity leave. I think that is absolutely amazing. Like
Blessing for us here in the UK, isn't it?
that's right, yeah. And that is definitely like important for the baby to form that kind of attachment as well. So that I suppose that is the best part of about the postpartum time for me that I can think of. Don't know if you can think of any.
Well, I think just focusing only on your child and having that luxury, and I'm calling that a luxury because I know that there are so many different places like India, America, they only have a couple of weeks and then you have to have sort of
Go back to-
you have to go back to work in any shape or form for them. And that I think that's why we have it so good.
Yeah.
Having the NHS for that matter.
Yeah.
You're not coming out of it with a big bill to, no matter how it's gone down.
I know.
These are all
Absolutely, yeah,
luxuries
that
that
is
sometimes I
true,
think
yeah.
people overlook and people only just look at the bad of NHS almost, but they don't realize. And that's because they don't see anything else.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
don't realize. I think we have that worldly view a little bit where we see what happens to relatives or friends, and just having that is so great as a perspective, just giving you a little bit of perspective of that. But the luxury is that we don't have to think about all those other things associated with childbirth. And we can have those newborn cuddles and have just a little period of rest after your busy careers and the life in general and the stress along with it. What that comes with it sometimes is the isolation. And the isolation is that you're not going back to your job, you're not going back to your own friends. Sometimes people might, message you and get in touch with you to see how you are. But a large portion of your time is spent with that child as a mum. And dads often get away with that because they go back to work after a certain amount of time. And that's just how it should be at the end of the day. But we were also, we would keep saying in our podcast, we were promised a village which we don't have. So sometimes that isolation hits home a little bit harder. I had the village for my first, not so much for my second, and I have that perspective of both. And I can think of both positives and negatives with it. And I think one of the main take-home messages that I have is that sometimes in this world that we are here just now, we might be between our child alone and social media, and that's it. Where you're stuck between that. So you feel you have a connection with the world actually, but you don't. And sometimes people here think, I'm all for let's give parents the space, which is 100% necessary for during that newborn time. Be that family, be that your own parents, your in-laws, your uncles, aunts, everyone wants to be with this little child and, just get cuddles and, those
Yeah.
kind of things.
Yeah.
But have to shift a little bit of the focus. And I want to turn it a little bit around on its head and say, sometimes are we giving them the right support during that postpartum period? So what is the right support?
I was just going to say, what is the right support? I mean, if you don't mind me speaking about like your kind of experience as well, I remember like obviously you kind of vocalized about like how young we were like when you had your kind of firstborn. I think we must have been about 25 or something like that, right? Like,
Something
and
along those
probably a bit
lines.
older, 26.
Yeah, about that. I mean,
And
certainly, like not young compared to other parts of the
Yeah.
world, maybe, but
Probably not,
yeah.
but yeah, in that kind of, in that kind of social situation, I suppose, like, you probably were one of the first ones, and I remember kind of thinking that I was not used to like kind of being around like quite a lot of like my friends who were kind of mums, and whenever I used to kind of come around, I was thinking, oh my goodness, like there's just a lot, and I didn't know anything about like kind of being a mum, and I was like, I desperately wanted to kind of help, and I was like, what would help? Do you know what I mean? Like whether like kind of going around more or taking a step back and giving you that space to like, do your own thing and parent. Like just there's no right way of helping someone, and now like when my sisters just had a baby as well, and again the same thing, like now that I know that like what postpartum was like and what being a mother, like a new mother, like, and it was like, I know there's a lot of places where she's probably going to struggle a little bit, and I just, there's not anything that you can do to kind of help. It's one of those things where you just have to keep on driving
Go on.
to get to that other end. Do you know what I mean? And there's nothing anyone can do would kind of help you with anything, because it is such a big, massive change. It's a change. Like your body's changed, your mind has changed, your brain's changed, as like your capacity's changed. Everything is just absolutely like if you're at your full
Losing
capacity.
a bit of an identity there, almost, actually. Yes, I agree with you. I think we do need to keep driving and get to the end of the day and wake up the next morning and just might have not slept most of the night and just keep going with that nappy changes 100%.
Yeah.
But there are things that my brain probably had or would help, I would say, is just, are you able to just pop in, say hello, and, look at, just hoover for me, or fold a couple of clothes, or put the laundry in even. Sometimes even just the task of initiating something, you might be able to finish it, but the task of initiating that task can be so hard. Like, make a cup of coffee and say, hold the baby while you have a coffee.
I think that probably is a big one, isn't it? Like, and it's just taking the child away for like a few minutes.
Just I can prep it for you. Can you just hold it, sort of thing. And that would be, great, just to have a little bit of time for yourself. Or it might be just to have, even for you to sit down and just look at your list in your head and say, okay, what else is there left to do, sort of thing. Isolation is one of the biggest things that I took away from postpartum, because I had someone who worked as a partner, who worked until late hours in the first pregnancy. So I had my parents close to me. So even just having them cook for me, and that part of it wasn't, I was fed, So those are things that I felt that was helped a little bit. Let's focus on I think we've discussed last time the Edinburgh scale and Edinburgh depression scale, and how I had mentioned that I probably looked to the list and said, I probably might be hitting that, but I don't want to say that. That is as a medic as well, which is kind of shameful for me now, but this was years ago. And by no means am I saying that that is something that I would have done with my second child or anything like that. Interestingly, I don't think she did it at Edinburgh scale with me the second time round, or probably she did, and it wasn't so much of an issue this time round, because I had, the way I was saying, I was able to look down on myself like an eagle almost and see everything that was happening me and understand it. But in my first pregnancy, I didn't understand that this
Yeah,
is
of
how I was
course.
feeling
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah.
So that was the difference between the first and the second
Yeah.
almost. And that allowed me to not, it's not about I fixed myself in any way.
Uh-huh.
That
But
is
you were
not the case.
more aware. Uh-huh.
Awareness was there and what to do about it. So
I think that was definitely interesting. Like, I listened to that bit as well, and I thought like that made me think about like that's exactly what I did as well. Like, I remember kind of going like, in fact, saying that out loud as well, saying that I don't like these questionnaires. Like, how are you meant to score like these
yeah,
questionnaires? Like,
yeah,
can you score yourself really low? Is that right? Like, low
yeah.
if you're doing really well, and really high if you're not doing well. And I was literally kind of going like, I'm crying every day. I'm like the rage that you talked about. Like, I'm exhausted. I'm overly stimulated. It's just me and the baby, like, for like a long time every day in lockdown. And I'm not like feeling like myself, but I don't want to put that down on paper. Like, my
Mm.
reality looks so much different than what people to see, or the questionnaires to kind of, do you know what I mean?
So
Like,
for others to see, you didn't want to put that
I
down.
don't know what that was about. I don't know why I kind of scored myself really low when I should have been really kind of high.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a bit where like that was all new to me. Like, people talk about being pregnant, people talk about like giving birth, people talk about these, but no one talks about postpartum. Like, the amount of calls I got, like I was the first one in my family to get, kind of have a child, and even the
Yeah.
external family, they were all like kind of checking up on me and like treating me like, my goodness, like,
Sometimes that just doesn't, it's not helping.
it's
It's not.
it's not, but the pregnancy bit, like, it was just myself, and they were all caring, for me, and like, and supporting me, and being there for me. But the minute the baby was born,
It's all about the
that
baby.
yes, it was. And also, like, there was no checking in with me. That it all went away. The first couple of weeks probably were like, oh, like, yeah, let's see the baby, how are you getting on, blah blah sort of stuff. And then like, you're like, oh, they'll manage, she'll manage, kind of thing. And then that's it, done. And then you kind of feel like you're forced yourself to feel like you are okay. And even though you don't feel like that, you can't just kind of vocalize that, if that kind of makes sense.
ഒരു മൂഡൽ വെക്കുന്ന ഒരു
Aha,
ഇതുണ്ട് where
aha.
you are suppressing your feelings
Exactly, because these are not
because
like,
the child needs you or the society requires you to be
aha,
fine
aha,
to
because no
function.
one gives you that permission to feel all the feelings that you're feeling, because no one's kind of talked about these feelings themselves. I barely even, like, I didn't even know what postpartum meant. I still don't know what baby blue means. Like, these kind of terms are
Okay.
very new
So
to me, kind of thing.
let's actually look into that a little bit. So baby blues is normal for you to feel a little bit on the low in terms of mood within the first 14 days to 4 weeks. So that is a normal feeling that you would have because of the drop in your happy hormones and because the time is particularly hard. That is the first 4 weeks. Anything beyond the first 4 weeks where you feel that your mood is low up until the first year of your child being born and being here with your child would then be classed as postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And we'll go into that a little bit more further. So that time between 4 weeks and then into the first year of that whole period of time, if you are feeling in any way low, it would be classed as postpartum depression. Now I love the way you said that. I don't understand. I didn't want to associate myself as being depressed. I didn't understand that were my feelings because it wasn't typical. Now, not
Exactly.
a lot of, and sometimes I do ask people, look, depression itself is a scale. It goes between really low mood, can't get out of bed and can't move and function, to sleeping more, to those kind of things, and to not having the interest in doing the things that you had before. And that is possible, and that is there for quite a lot of people. And the problem is when they only focus on those people and think that is depression.
Exactly.
As opposed
And
to
the
this,
other scale.
there is when I think about the scale and I ask, well, often what happens is we do realize that we need to keep going,
Yeah.
and therefore we get up in the morning,
Yeah.
or it's not that you spend a lot of time in bed sleeping,
Yeah.
but rather
you're
you're
just
in bed at
frantically,
night. You're
cleaning or shouting or
Yeah,
aha.
the anxiety part of it.
Exactly.
And the anxiety is more the case for us because we have to live up to these standards of, and therefore we are constantly thinking, have we done enough? Have we done that? Have we done? And when you're in bed and you can't sleep, when you can't sleep and your mind is rushing, you're anxious.
Exactly.
And often that is the case of, and that is still part of postpartum. It is
And
postpartum anxiety, but yes, it is classed as PPD almost.
Exactly, and that is the difference, and it looks different for different people. But your idea of like, even though you know what baby blue is meant to be like, or PPD, like what sounds like, because you've got a picture of like lying in bed, not being able to move, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But what you experience, you're like, that's not baby blue, that's not PPD, and you're not in that kind of denial, kind of not in a denial, but you're not aware of what you're kind of feeling. I think being anxious and being like quite frantic and being, I remember having a chat with my sister saying like every little bumps and like little, thing on your baby, like you're just, what is that? Because you're so focused, you're so fixated on like kind of keeping that baby alive, and you're just so worried and really anxious about like, is he going to be okay in first one whole year? Maybe not 1 year, but maybe it is for different people. You're just so heightened. Your anxiety is so heightened, and you continues to work so hard to make sure you don't get to the other end. If you do give in to all this sort of stuff, you are going to be ending up in the bed and just not being able to move. But you're working, like my friends are going to text me like in a private message and saying, look, you need to phone the GP. You might have PPD. And she said, that's what I had. And being on picking up the call, the phone, and just phoning the GP and getting support would help you to manage things. And I'm like, I don't think I've got PPD. I'm just ranting about something, and like I'm just having a go at something, but that doesn't sound like PPD. And then I did reflect on it. And I was like, maybe you know what? Maybe it is. Maybe I should phone the GP, and I did. And I think it was a mental health practitioner or something. And the more I talked about like what was going to go on, she kind of said to me that it's circumstances. It is new. You're a new mom in lockdown, and you're coping. And I think at some point she'd asked me what I was, what I did for a living, and I said, explain like what I was doing, and she said, look, you know things like better than I do, so you know this is circumstances. And I was kind of thinking, I plucked the courage to pick up that phone and ask for support. Do you know what I mean? And I know, like I told you about, like the medication, I've got like such different views about medication. Like personally, like even when I'm like really struggling, if I'm in pain and stuff, like I don't take paracetamol. So imagine like going to the GP and saying, look, give me something to take the edge off. Give me something to like stabilize myself. Like that's not something I would have ever considered, but I just wanted someone to kind of say to me.
You had got to that point where you was crying for help, and then just you were.
Exactly.
I think sometimes we work so hard to become these professionals, and then that is sometimes turned round against us, and we are so disappointed by it, because that I do feel like if it was anyone else who was calling, maybe you would have got a little bit more.
Do you think so?
Help. Maybe she would have said the same thing. I don't know.
Maybe,
and that's the problem, where sometimes we have drilled into professionals that depression looks like this, and depression doesn't always look like that. Depression will sometimes look like a high functioning anxiety, and that's what I want to probably put across the main point today, that not everything looks like a mum that is in bed or having.
Exactly.
At this point, I'll maybe just add in postpartum psychosis, and that just a small thing, that is something that is entirely possible, and it can happen within that first year at any point. And just ensuring that if you have ill feelings towards that child or towards yourself, and if there is any, and that the help is out there for you as well, and
Yeah.
just to keep that in the back of your head as well.
That's
But
a good
look,
point. Yeah.
at
Again, something that we don't hear about.
no, that's why I wanted to say it.
But depending on what you do, work-wise as well, something that you see very clearly
Yeah.
that this happens.
Yeah, it's of course it happens. And
Oh, yeah.
every time you have a pregnancy, if you've had a psychosis before, you have a higher chance of, and you need to get help early through your pregnancy and then into beyond as well. So I won't say anything more on that,
Yeah.
but that I just wanted to say that is
Yeah.
a possibility as well. Let's go back to your
Yeah.
issue there, and the fact that wasn't just given. I think options should have been maybe probably given to you as to what you were hoping for from that.
And I think I was just quickly saying to you, like, even being in this profession, like, there are like a lot of issues that like I come across, like, where people deal with, and then I know like there's potential like not solutions, like potential different ways to manage these kind of problems. Medication is one. Therapy is another one.
If Amla was here, that would be the
she would have talked, and there is another bit like what I kind of advocate about, like, you put in your own strategies and your own methods to make sure that you take care of your challenges. We're all capable of that, and we all do that. Like, and there's no, there's not like, sometimes it's just like one of those things that kind of work for you better than the other. Sometimes all three would kind of like
I think
work.
sometimes if it's anxiety, sometimes almost just taking medication to try and help calm your mind so that you can focus on what you are trying to achieve in therapy. I mean, I am now a bigger advocate of therapy than I was maybe even just a few years before. And sometimes you jump on this medication wagon a bit early. Sometimes it's just needed, and it is everyone's own right to make that decision for themselves. Sometimes I would say, why don't you just try it and see? Even if you're breastfeeding, something like a sertraline is absolutely fine, so you can take it in. It's just balance of, look, what you said,
balance.
You need a happy mum
to
have a happy baby,
whatever
and
that kind of
therefore
works.
if that works out for you, then go for it.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you decide to go for it and say, look, actually it's not doing a huge amount. Please give it at least 6 weeks to even sometimes 2 months to see if there was much of a benefit.
And I think being a GP yourself, I think you would have a little bit more. You obviously like medication. You totally hear what you're saying, and I think for me, like, having worked as a therapeutic worker, like, and I've always kind of said therapy is not the only way, kind of thing as well. Same as like, you're saying like medication is not the like,
and it might be that actually we need to try and travel on all of it and see which one is right for
like
you. And I love your coping strategies that you said, and I'll give you something. Recently, me and my daughter have started journaling together. And sometimes she doesn't want it. Sometimes I don't want to do it. But actually, it's just, I wish I did go back and do that. Now, I had anxiety with the first one. Second one, I knew certain coping strategies were already there to help with that maybe. And I did the walks, which is amazing, by the way. If you take your time out and go for a walk, which is great. And now I look back at Snapchat and looking at all those stuff maybe a year ago and going out for walks, and I was like, why not you? My child doesn't require that as such, but she loves going out anyways, and she does that with the childminder. So I don't get it so much, but I do realize the impact of that at that point in time was 100% the best thing I needed. But that's another thing. And the third thing, I suppose what I wanted to say is this time round, I had a little bit of postpartum rage. And what is the source of that? It is, naturally I'm a outspoken, loud person when it comes to emotions, but it didn't come from anger. It is, the rage really came from the overwhelm, because I've had two, the house, and there's lots of things, but it was now much more overwhelming for me. And I literally had to go, come here, take the kid, walk away from me.
Oh God, yeah.
And that is
definitely,
this difference between knowing that I can do that and the psychosis where you can't do that. And I can tell you, that's when I've defined myself. I'll put my hands on my heart rate. But but that is what I mean, where just walk away from that situation and keep, as long as your child is safe, and ask for help. And two things that I did by vocalizing it wrote it down to my partner, which was probably,
Aw.
I want to say, yes, I did it, but maybe I should have just put it on a journal because we don't know where that paper is anymore.
I've had a client a couple of weeks ago where he's got all sort of diagnoses. He's struggling really bad. Is physically in pain. Mentally, he's got a lot of issues. And one of the things that we were talking about, like he's given me permission to talk about, obviously without divulging any information as well. It was like he's got diagnosed ADHD and he's taking medication for that. But there's a shortage in medication like all around UK, and he was absolutely done. And he was like, I'm not taking any medication anymore. No one's listened to what's going on. I am in pain, but no one wants to kind of help. I think I'm going to do something off my head just to kind of get support. And then we talked a little bit, and then I kind of said, I did ask, like, what does support look like? What does help look like? And then one of the things that I said to him was, look, if you didn't have this pain thing, whatever, issue that he was dealing with, a physical issue that he was dealing with, if you didn't have that kind of going on, do you think you'd still be okay? Do you think, and if you got the medication, do you think you'd still be able to kind of manage things? And he just kind of went really silent and said, you've got a lot of issues, like childhood trauma or like whatever like looks like. There's a lot of things kind of going on. When you're down, when you're in pain, all these kind of things kind of come up.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes like a medication does help and you feel like that's the only thing that kind of gets you through your day, and then obviously you've got a lot of people working with you as well, so the therapy you're talking, that's there too, but clearly these two things are not enough, and when one thing's missing, or when there's a shortage in medication or whatever sort of thing, you're seeing that it's struggling, you're getting to the top bit, so what do you think is missing? And then he was like, I don't know. And then I said, why don't you start thinking about like developing your own strategies, like, and if try different things, whatever that you're into, take a piece of paper, like write down stuff, not like a journal. Sometimes journal is a bit too much. What I suggest to some people, and I sometimes do as well, if you're feeling really overwhelmed, take a piece of paper and a pen, do different pens if you like to kind of keep it a bit more thingy, and then start writing things like, I am feeling overwhelmed, not the whole sentence, but a couple of like one word, overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, don't know, do you know, like random words as you kind of like say it out and loud, and then like, once your perspective starts shifting a little bit, like once you start feeling a bit like, okay, I feel a bit better, use a different color, and then you will start seeing more things like feeling better, like relieved, I'm grateful for what I have. Like, it is such a powerful thing to do.
What you've just demonstrated in showing in that case is taking the power to yourself and trying to say, look, I am not focusing on something externally to fix my problem.
Exactly.
I'm looking at myself to great, because you want to take ownership, and there might be a lot of things as part of the postpartum, like why that's the case, that's happened. It might be a trauma from birth, trauma from when you were a child,
Exactly,
trauma from your parents parenting you,
exactly,
and there could be lots of things that's underlying, and how your perspective of how you're going to parent this child. And remember, your partner and you have come from two different styles of parenting.
You're speaking my language.
Yes. And so when you come together and you are now going to try and shape this child's, it is going to be two different languages. And therefore you need to start talking in one language. Fun fact, I don't think that's fun at all, but fact, let's say fact. The most amount of separation happens in the first year of having the child.
That's exactly what I was thinking about when you were saying that.
And that is because that we can't be on the same page, and no one sits down and say, oh, this is my child and this is how I'm going to parent them, this is how it's going to happen, and this is how we're going to run this household before the child comes. You are literally thrown into it in a lot of ways, and how you can have a clean parent, you can have a untidy parent, and how these two come together. How your marriage then goes forward depends on how you have learned to problem solve, probably within that first year. And no one tells you these things.
No one does. And I think, from a very an attachment kind of perspective, I'm gonna like kind of give it a little let's spin on that and say, like, see, like when you're kind of facing a lot of problems, like, you become the child that you were when you were younger, and you're looking for someone else to kind of come on, like a parent, a caregiver, like a figure to come and rescue you. when you're in a relationship, when you're in a marriage, when you're a mum, like when you have your own child that you need to like kind of, tend to like their needs, you have to prioritize that child, but
Yep.
you're kind of your inner child is the one who's taken in charge, like the one who's going to come to the surface. And then you're looking to your partner to rescue that inner child.
Yes.
But they don't know how to do that because they are being their inner child is being charged as well. So there's a nice photo that I kind of came across, like, and then I've used this with my clients as well, where two outlines of two adults, like in a relationship, sitting back to back from each other, but the inner child, there's a child inside that kind of outline, that structure, trying to reach out to each other, like two children. And that's what we're trying to do, because the inner children in us, like, are trying so hard to like be able to connect with the other person or someone else to be there and rescue you. But we cannot do that because we're two children fighting to survive, fighting your traumas, fighting your triggers, and then we've got a child. Where do we go from there? That's exactly. So it is good to, like, yes, problem solving and talking about what you need and stuff. That ideally would work, but sometimes when you are stuck in that, like, like in that cycle or that kind of situation, you just cannot move on, and that ends up in separation.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what I mean? Okay. I can talk about, like, in my own person, like, my inner child or my attachment is very anxious or ambivalent attachment, like, because like we grew up with, like, my mum and dad were kind of like we didn't grow up with my mum and dad there. So anytime, like, I get in a bit of a situation or feel like, oh, there's something going on, I feel like that person is going to leave. Do you know what I mean? Whereas my husband's is the opposite, and he's an avoidant attacher. So which means when problems come, he takes that on himself. He's like, oh, I'm the bad child. Like, everyone thinks I'm a bad child, and then he just kind of shuts down. So for an attacher, like, who thinks I'm getting rejected by my husband, because that's what I feel.
Oh God, that's what you
I'm
need.
sorry,
but
yeah.
he's, oh gosh.
That's one couple. So we all have these different attachments based on our circumstances or like in a life, or being parented, own trauma and stuff like that. And then you have a child who's got,
oh gosh,
I'm sorry, I know this is but that's the reality. And how do you navigate that? Because no one has the manual for that. And when you can navigate that, when you can come out of that, you just go for, like, the easier thing. Not easier thing, but that's a hard thing. But
nothing is easy in that way, but sometimes you take upon yourself to free yourself from
exactly.
Yeah, no, I understand. So we went in deep there, but I think just thoughts for everyone to kind of have that in the back of your head, because sometimes you only see the one side of it, but could there be, oh, that's really good, the way you've described it. Come to things like breastfeeding and bottle feeding, and what do we do? I think I'll touch a little bit. I mean, we were talking about how midwives in this country have gone from bottle feeding to a big swing, and that is because of research and a lot of training and a lot of things, and because we understand the importance of breastfeeding, and it has gone quite 360. And I know that you and other people that you were describing had felt that this was put on you and this is something that you should do. Being a doctor and also having breastfed for a very long time, thinking about it, you have to take an approach that is best for you and for your child. And that whilst breastfeeding, WHO have said that the best is to breastfeed for 2 years. Now, I have gone through every emotion associated with that, from guilt to going into work in the middle of the night, having a breastfed baby at home who can't go to sleep without the boobs. And, honestly, the kind of feelings of all of that, and how you're powerless, that I have made the right decision for my child, but at the same time, people at home, when they are trying to look after that baby, can't calm them down, and you having to work through that at work. They're all associated with, or the mum guilt of dropping that child off at 1 year, who's only known you as a main parent or carer, to pull a child away and drop them off, it was screaming,
Yeah.
and you come back to find, well, the guilt of going away to work and coming back and being told, well, she wasn't so great with her food, or she wasn't eating, or she wasn't, and then
Yeah.
But like I said, perspective is everything. Time gives you a lot of different nuggets of importance. So I wouldn't say, I think the only thing to say in terms of feeding wise, do what's right for you and your child.
And it's hard. It can be hard to know what's right. Like when you're a new mum, everything is new to you. Like I don't
that's
know
true.
anything about breastfeeding. Like I can only go by what other people tell you, and other people quite clearly have told me that breastfeeding is
perfect.
It's perfect.
It's this
and
big
then
thing.
you get into this thing where really unhealthy relationship, and I know I'm not just on my own with that. Like where you just fixate on like breastfeeding, and then I remember this is like really unhealthy way of like what I did, like when I was going to go into that phase, like my little one had extreme reflux, and obviously lockdown, like, and it made things like quite challenging as well. And I remember like whenever like he had bottle fed, like, and he would just react very like badly as well, kind of thing. And then I would have like a bottle of formula milk sitting there, and then like me kind of expressing and stuff, just that as a motivator for me to kind of breastfeed and like kind of get to a really good amount. And it was so toxic.
Hard,
And
isn't it?
it is. And there were people coming around to my house, like in the professionals, breastfeeding champions and stuff. You're doing really well. Just keep going. Just like keep expressing and make sure that you keep up with your whatever you call it, your volume or whatever sort of thing. And I'm like, these are all really good. They're all trying to they're all trying to help you, but there's another side.
Yeah.
Where?
Well, mine never took bottles, and I tried and tried and tried, and I shoved bottles in their mouths, and I tried and I tried, and then second time round, it was all about, I'm not going to do the breastfeeding down because of the struggles, and all of those times I thought about what other people told me. Never did I think about actually my child was happy with breastfeeding. So when it came to the second time round, I did struggle because I was so fixated of that was my goal, to be more outward and freedom of being able to go and do things while someone can look after my child at home with a bottle. That was the aim of it, because of my experience with the first. And actually I then eventually took a decision saying, look, nothing happened with my first child. She didn't want a bottle as well, went through it, she eventually came off the breast, and I was able to go on through my life. Has it been hard? Of course. Obviously you have to go everywhere with your child. Second time round, I honestly don't care where I'll feed her anywhere. I got to that wasn't easy. That wasn't in any way easy. And the second thing I told myself is, I will not let anyone else decide on what I would do. So if that choice is to do that on demand, whenever it is, however you want to do it, you decide. You take that path, and do not let anyone else do not let anyone else's thoughts come into your decision making.
It's hard though, isn't it? It's
because
harder than
it is hard. It is hard as
you do
said
get
than done.
there though. Like,
because
I think
the thing is, when you have an anxious brain, anyone who talks around you to their kids, or they are all affecting your brain.
Oh God, yeah.
They're all affecting your brain. And then you have this running commentary of them chatting and their thoughts and what their opinions are, and they're all in your brain. So you can't think
switch
for yourself. You can't switch it off, and you do not hear your own thoughts.
Exactly.
So I learned it the hard way, and I have come to that point where now I'll call people off. If they say, oh, you should be stopping for breastfeeding, I'll be like, no, it is my decision, and it's my child's decision, and we will decide when we will.
Nice. Well done.
But that wasn't easy to come, because until then, it was, what is the right thing to do? What is this the right thing? Is it helpful? Or so many thoughts. Now I will
do what's
it
right
anywhere.
for you.
I'll feed anywhere. I see the importance of it. That being said, at the same time, with my same mouth, I'll also say, if it is not right for you, if you find another route or need to have another route, please go down that road.
Yeah.
I must admit, now looking back, I do like the way Americans do it because they have no luxury of having the long maternity leave that we have. Therefore, they pump
It's
early.
easier, isn't it? Yeah.
They start pumping
easier,
early,
yeah.
and they give it in a bottle.
Yeah.
And the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
They have the freedom.
Yeah.
They have, the
Yeah.
pumping part of it.
Probably not how they would describe it, but yeah.
No, what I'm trying to say
Yeah.
is maybe that is an option for you which you might not have
Yeah.
considered.
Uh-huh.
Because if you think about it, you were trying to pump on top of feeding.
Uh-huh.
And-
Absolutely, yeah.
And to try and
everything
increase
else.
your volume. Look, that is not achievable.
No.
Your baby has drunk what you've already made. Then to try and you can increase. There are
Yeah.
various ways of increasing the amount of
But-
breast milk.
Uh-huh.
Please come to one of us. I
Yeah.
mean, milk cookies are great.
Yeah.
There's lots of different things you can take. And do your research on that. You can increase your milk supply, but you also need to consume a lot of water and a lot of different supplements to achieve that. But what I'm trying to say is there might be another option where you're pumping fully and whatever you pump goes to the child sort of thing. That is slightly different to demand.
Yeah.
And it has a bit of both. And it might not be something that you knew about.
Yeah.
That is the only reason I'm putting it out there. And that might be something for you guys if you want your partner, or if you're struggling with nipple
Nipple aversion.
nipple aversion, nipple trauma. And those might be something to consider.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go. We'll wind it up a little bit, but I'm thinking of the most important thing, I suppose, here. We've talked about isolation, we've talked about breastfeeding, we've talked about mental health part of it.
Different ways to get help and trying out what works for you.
What works for you. Amla would be going therapy here. That would be, so anyway, that's us, I suppose. One of the hard things. Very hard for us to do this. And I'm just so glad I have your perspective here for it as well.
Me
But
too, like yours as well.
but yeah, anyway, that's us. We'll sign off.
It's a long topic, but we got to the end.
So we'll leave it at that just for now and see you guys next time.